sauce of like what all have you done in the past? I want to know. I want to know like the details of that.
Yeah, absolutely, Jackson. Happy to share what my history is, and then what I'm doing today. So just quick background. I was in the Navy in 2012 to 2016. Joined. So my father was an entrepreneur. He had started a company in 1999. I joined him. Getting out of the military. Started at the bottom. It was an IT staffing company. The company was doing about 12 million in revenue at the time. Started as a recruiter and worked my way up through the company over 4 years. We ended up selling that company in 2020 when I was the chief operating officer of the company. And at that time, we had grown it to 65 million in revenue. And we took a few actions that really got us there, and we made the company more data driven. So we just doubled down our investment in the right places that automatically scale that revenue behind it, which was really cool to watch the company grow, and it went exponential. So that was kind of my first, I would say, experience with entrepreneurship.
That's a big first. That's a big
Yeah.
first way to start off in entrepreneurship. And thank you for your service, by the way, in the Navy.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. It's a great experience. And my dad's a fantastic sales guy. He can sell you on anything. And that's how he built the business. What I find in a lot of entrepreneurs with various skill sets is they're really great at the sales. They love their, whatever they're going after, their vision. But sometimes internally, you need some professional management to come in to really organize and help them build that, the foundation for scale. And I think that's where I was able to complement what he was doing. Is I was the finance guy and the operations guy, and I would look at, hey, where's the resources going? Where's the investment being put? Are we wasting any money anywhere? And is everyone doing their job? And that really helped facilitate some of that scale, which was pretty cool.
That is super cool. And it is fun to see a visionary and integrator come into contact that harmonize, and it can very much help when it's family. I heard an old friend the other day talk about how he doesn't do business with family members, and my heart hurt for him. I've heard people do that. It's like you're cutting off the people that you trust the most in life. In his case, he comes from an excellent family. There are other families where, you wouldn't want to do business with family, but we don't, I think it's just so silly to cut off your potential resources based on an arbitrary belief without exploring what might be possible. And you and your dad just did that. You explored it, you hit it, and you reap the benefits from joining forces. So that's super cool. What if there's a book, a series of books, three books or resources that you recommend for visionaries? Anand, what would they be?
Yeah, so I have a couple that I've changed my mindset, I would say. So that was more brute force sales tactics. The company had already scaled, so we were already doing 12 million, right? It wasn't a small forming company, and we scaled it to 65 million. We had the people that were there. So now I'm starting a new company, and the way I'm going about it is the book I like is Key Person of Influence by Daniel Priestley. So I've met Daniel at a conference through my network. Spoke to him, and it's a really cool book. And basically he says, there's tons of businesses in every industry, but how do you stay on top, or how do you stick out, right? How do you become that key person of influence in that industry so that all the really cool deals come to you, right? Or to those few key people of influence. And there'll be a bunch of them in each community. You go to a conference, you see the same 5 speakers. Well, you found your key people of influence. Now, how do you get there? And that's the one I'm actually looking at now with the new business. So just going back, Jackson. So we exited that one in 2020. Started a new company in 2020 called ITT Digital, which is an IT services firm. We scaled that up to 8 million in revenue in 3 years, and exited that at the end of 2023 as well. And that was, again, very brute force sales, right? It's like a business that wasn't a key person of influence. You're really spending a top dollar and doing all the whining and dining to open those clients, even though you have a fantastic offering and a fantastic team. And that's why this new kind of way of going about it is really, really exciting to see if that really makes a difference when you look at your business and scaling.
I can tell you right now, it makes a huge difference. Never heard of the book. I'm a massive advocate of the concept. I've experienced that firsthand. So when I went from my first couple startups to working with Jake Larson at Video Power Marketing, Jake was known as the YouTube ad expert of the world. The founder of YouTube called him on the phone, asked him to represent YouTube ads before it launched. And then Ryan Deiss put him on stage at Traffic and Conversion and called him the YouTube ad expert of the world. So when you got digitalmarketer.com and YouTube's founder endorsing you and you run with that, it creates an excellence and a distribution that you want to capitalize on. Well, we were doing ads for people who had a minimum ad spend budget of $10,000 a month on YouTube ads. And so here we are doing ads for Entrepreneur on Fire, John Lee Dumas, Dan Martell of SaaS Academy, Michael Hyatt, T. Harv Eckert, even Pagan. All these people you talk about were on stages, Billie Jean Marketing. I'm forgetting so many good ones, but Dr. Eric Berg. These are influencers who it was so easy to promote and sell for them because people did know, like, and trust them. There's a ton of proof out there regarding it. For Jake, my first phone call was somebody who said, I just wanted to make sure y'all spoke English. And I said, yes, we do. How can I help you? And he said, my name is such and such. I'm with this, and I shouldn't do this. But I heard Jake on stage, take my money. That was a sales call. I had never experienced anything like that in my life. Right. So you're spot on. And any entrepreneur visionary who's listening in, whatever you can do to make sure, figure out what you do well, and then build your authority, your credibility, your social proof will go a long ways to helping you get in the door and provide your service to people. So
Yep, absolutely.
Love that book. What else you got? You got 2 more books? I won't go off on them, I promise.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, so those are all 80-hour, 100-hour kind of work weeks. You're really grinding, and now I look at what I want my future to be. And now that's when I think a very famous book, 4-Hour Work Week, kind of comes into play, and that is like, yeah, of course, a doctor and a lawyer, and okay, they make $1 million salary, but when you look at the hours to compensation ratio, is it that much better of a life? And that's what also really got me thinking. What do you look at your life later on? Is it, when you're going to your grave, is it playing with your grandchildren, or and having a good family balance, or is it traveling the world? Or is it that, hey, I saved so many patients or fought so many lawsuits, or whatever it might be for you, right? So I think that one is the new that I've switched into, is like, hey, how do you maximize? And 20% of our actions determine 80% of that growth. So how do you figure out what those 20% actions are? And even when you look at something as small as email, which is one of the concepts he had in the book, is that, hey, we check email like it's text message night. We wake up, check email, but if you just put a 1-hour block saying, only doing it now, you're so much more efficient. You get so much done. You just turn off all your notifications. And it was kind of a pretty eye-opening when you look at how much more efficient you become when you do some of the small things, which is
absolutely cool. You got another one?
That was the second one. I'm trying to think of what a third one would be. I mean, I'm a huge Elon Musk fan in general. I think the new book that just came out, I think 6 months ago, is very eye-opening for any visionary or entrepreneur on kind of the craziest success story you would hear in the world. So that's, I think, a must-read for everyone. But there's a lot of those. Like, if you love Disney, I like, Ride of a Lifetime was an awesome book on how he went through acquisition through growth, and they bought Star Wars and LucasArts, and then they bought Marvel, and then how they scaled that. So pretty cool to see how these guys go about it, and the type of deals they make, and that's a lot of learning when you see.
I think you hit something big on the head there too. It's not just about the book, but the author behind it, right? And I like that you said it's a must read. So have some fun with that. But yeah, see, when you can get behind the book itself to the author and start to learn from them as an individual and seek them out as a potential mentor as well, it's amazing what types of opportunities that can come your way and accomplishments you can have. So I definitely recommend going to the source of the information and extracting what you can. We got many, I think all 3 of the ones you mentioned are all alive to this day. Why not take the opportunity to dig in? If any of you listening in knows how to contact or is friends with Elon, send him our way. No, we'd love to get to know him. So we'll take a quick break, and we'll come back. We'll talk about Anand Narayan. I'm gonna master this name. I'm like dying to make sure I have it mastered.
Got it right.
So Narayan. Such a cool last name too. Reminds me of Orion. That's my son's middle name, by the way. Pop quiz for people later. But while we're taking the break, consider commenting, subscribing. Also consider leaving a review for the podcast, and we will see you on the other side for Anand's Vision. All right, welcome in to Vision Pros Live with Jackson Callum. I'm your show host. We will be doing interviews for visionary entrepreneurs and guest leaders who are building fantastic visions out there. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome in for another Vision Pros Live episode. I got a little distracted because I was like, man, when I was playing that, I was going to go shut that door and I totally forgot. We'll leave it open. You guys can see my house. It's a little San Antonio Riverwalk sign in the background. But anyway, without further ado, we're going to dive right into providing value for each of you. My first point of value being forgive yourself when you make mistakes. Second point of value being in the form of sponsorships up here. We're going to start with Melissa Gray from The Law Spot. Melissa Gray runs thelawspot.com. We've actually just finished the blueprint with her as well. She is one of our clients, by the way. And the blueprint we've created helps magnify the reality that law does not have to be complicated. I'm really a big fan of what she's up to. We've got an event coming up, by the way. If you're in the Dallas area on April 16th, we're going to be doing a Mixer Mastermind networking event. I know it's gonna go really, really fast, and it's also coming up super, super soon. But we're excited about that. And I'm the type of business owner who went through a $20,000 trademark lawsuit, and we won. But did we? When we lost $20,000 in the process of trying to keep our name. In addition to that, Apple patented our software. Same exact company. It was also Restaurant Connect. And one of the things that I could have done better sooner in my life as an entrepreneur is consider the value of being a wise steward and making sure that I had talked to lots of different options and really, really built out my vendor network. That would have put me in a better position to have the right type of attorney by my side in those situations. I hope you do the same. That's all. Just consider her as you look at your opportunities to protect yourself, but also knowing that when you find the right lawyer, they can also help you on your merger and acquisition opportunities and negotiations as well. That puts you in a stronger position to grow and build. You got to find a lawyer who actually cares about your growth beyond just the times when you're desperate for it. Then there's Andrew Sosin of Recovery Unplugged. I love what he's built. If this helps one person, fantastic. If it helps everybody, well, congratulations on being self-aware. Recovery Unplugged is an addiction recovery program, and so many people suffer from all sorts of levels of addictions. I see too many people beat themselves up in this category as well. Too many youth who think that they're addicted to something because their parents freaking out. Again, I'll digress back to the entrepreneurship application here for those who don't have kids. Just finding the right resource of a professional who can help, especially one that understands the power of virtual support. COVID pushed Andrew into the position of needing to go from 5 physical locations to being able to provide this program online to individuals. I think it's one of the greatest things that could have happened for this world. They now have a 24/7 hotline that you can turn to. They incorporate music into the process as well. And they have over 400 team members who work with them on this. Now, I always like to add, they're very aligned with Tony Robbins' programs as well. Andrew's been 22 years in a row to that program. So if you happen to align with Tony's philosophies as a leader and what he does and how he does things, then this is definitely a program worth taking a look at and tacking on to your own personal development, or something you may want to recommend again to friends and family who don't know where to go for help. Again, I hope this helps at least one of you out there. And then there's the Water Project. The Water Project is our go-to recommendation in terms of causes. There's millions of people in this world who don't have access to clean drinking water. That's something I've never suffered from. And I'm so blessed to never have suffered from not having water. So why not pick a cause that we can support where there's millions of people who don't have this and try to inspire the world to give back. Now, if you're not in a position to give back, then please just share this message with others who might be able to, because you never know who in your network's going to be the person who drops 500,000 or maybe $5 to bless one of these communities. The cool thing is, if you do contribute to a specific community, you're actually going to get an email that helps you know like what's going on and what happened with your money. What did they create? Did they create a sand dam? Did they create a borehole well? You get to see the effect that you have on this community. So we have the opportunity to create generational impact by giving back to this cause And if you have a cause that you'd rather see us support, or something that's just kind of drawing on your heartstrings, or maybe you have a family member who has a crowdfunding Kickstarter, do us a favor, just drop that in the comments. We're happy to see if we can support and help. There's 8 billion people in this world who need help in a lot of different ways. This is our way of trying to give back to them. So without further ado, I'll bring Anand on stage. We'll talk about his vision, and we'll dive into all things capital markets, entrepreneurship, and how to be fruitful as we build. Welcome to the stage, Anand. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's my honor to have you, man.
Yeah, thanks, Jackson. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Let's go into this first question here. So, Anand, what's your vision for those that you serve with? And this could be in Kenobi Capital with your venture. This could be outside of that. I'll let you take us from here.
Yeah, I think there's two main visions. I'll start with Kenobi Capital and why I'm doing this. So I've gone through the sale of 2 companies and some smaller sales in between. And what I really found through this exiting process is that the incentives for a small business owner to exit are not aligned with the traditional people in that market. If you look at traditional private equity, their business model is buy low, sell high. And that doesn't align with the small business owner that's really built this whole company, taking a lot of risk, and 80% of employment is with small business owners, right? That's where most of us are employed. So they're taking a lot of risk, but they're not able to exit from their companies at the value they deserve. And the second thing in this market is that you have a lot of business brokers, which also, their job is to help you exit, but they don't, necessarily understand your business. They don't know how to increase the valuation of the business or how to present it to that potential buyer. So the first thing that I'm really trying to do is help small business owners exit with the maximum potential value on the best possible terms with peace of mind. And the real reason I'm going after this is in the first exit that we had, we were owners, we were operators, we made a lot of mistakes. And unfortunately, when we actually exited, that went into a lawsuit. It was bought by a private equity firm. And then, we found out the whole business model was to do this. They will just stop payments, they will extend it, because you as a small business owner don't want to get into legal. You're not used to getting into kind of a legal battle.
Right.
That's a big decision. So you can imagine a 65-year-old man or woman entrepreneur has a family, kids, maybe grandkids on the way, and all of a sudden this baby they've grown over 20 plus years is something they hate. They're fighting a lawsuit over this company because they're not getting paid for it, and that's real heartbreak to see happen, and it's something we've gone through, and it's really unfortunate, and happens to a ton of small business owners that are.
Let's expand on that. I want to know, if you don't mind, what are some of the details of you mentioned that the business model is kind of designed to make that happen. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, sure. So let's look at simply, okay, when you make a deal and they approach you, they give you an unbelievable valuation. It's something that you first didn't imagine you can get, right? So that's the first thing. And it was a red flag for us. We talked to a lot of people, but it seemed reasonable for, we were doing about 65 million in revenue at the time, and it seemed reasonable based on the revenue numbers, but maybe not on the profit margin. So you get enticed with this really nice offer, but then they say something like, hey, we'll pay you 25% upfront, and then, you get this kind of payout, and it'll be over 3 to 4 years. And then you have some earnouts and some employment contracts and all that need to continue. And even when you hit these benchmarks, the payments get delayed. And that's right. If they're paying you quarterly or every 6 months or every year, that payment starts getting pushed, saying, okay, we're having trouble, right? We'll pay you we'll pay you the whole thing. Then that mark hits. And then again, there's some excuse it gets paid, or they pay you something small, like a token. And that just starts getting the payments pushed. Now, you as the entrepreneur, you don't buy and sell companies. You're not really well-versed with the legalities of the whole thing. You're an owner-operator. So you postpone your time frame to make it a lawsuit, right? And that's the real mistake is you don't want this to become a lawsuit. You're very positive. You're very hopeful that things will work out the way that you want. And unfortunately, that's not the case in most of these scenarios. And you eventually do have to go into a lawsuit. And we spent over $500,000 fighting this lawsuit, and it took 3 years, and we finally won about 4 months ago, because of course we were in the right. But if you don't go through that exercise, and what if you give up? Right, you spend $250,000 and you give up, and you don't push it all the way, or you don't have a great lawyer. So there's a lot of things that can happen.
Yes,
The real question is, who do you trust? Right?
it's huge.
That's the real question. You are a small business owner. You are looking to exit your company and retire or sail into the sunset. You do this once in your lifetime. Who do you trust? And how do you really negotiate properly? And who's on your team? And those are very hard questions to answer. And that's what we had to learn the hard way.
That's huge. I'm glad you shared that. There's so many business owners that are going through this right now,
Yep.
and the market is getting hotter and hotter because of the baby boomers,
Yep.
right? So a lot of businesses are in the process of moving towards the exit and planning for it and preparing for it. So, the cool thing is, as that conversation heats up, the younger market is starting to pay attention a little bit more. We're all starting to take a look at well, and I'm seeing people in their 20s now starting to really plan around the exit strategies and what's there. So there's going to be people who come in and just want to make a quick buck, and it's very important to be aware of what red flags should we look for, what good things should we look for at the same time. And we're not going to use all of the time today to talk about that. We're going to shelve that. We might come back to it towards the end. But I'm actually really happy to have you on my radar personally. I want to get you and Melissa talking as well, because I want to see where the gaps are, right, that exist between y'all's two different brands, and knowing how that affects, well, if I know my gaps and I know her gaps and I know your gaps, then when I run into different opportunities and situations, it gives me a better chance to know who to call to involve in that process and say, hey, here's where we're at, here's where our opportunities exist, while also making sure I mitigate risks for the brand. So awesome.
Absolutely.
Your vision. What about you personally? What is your vision?
Yeah. So one thing right now I'm looking to do is get this company kicked off, of course, and start helping these small business owners. But in general, what I really want to do is to be able to help a lot of people on more of the financial management aspect, especially with America's debt levels and overspending that we have today. I think a lot of people are maybe not well educated on how do you manage personal finances, right? So I think there's multiple visions in this. One is, first, how do you help the small business owner get their exit and make sure they get the value for that? But then how do you protect that money and invest it where you get a proper return for that money? And that's of course at maybe a higher end of someone exiting for a couple $1 million. But how do you help people that are maybe not as well off or as lucky that can start a business? How do you help them do the right things? And I know there's a lot of things in today's market that help people do that, but I don't think it's touched enough people.
Yeah.
There's still a huge problem with credit card debt, right? Living paycheck to paycheck, and how do we change those things? And there's small things you can take advantage of that people don't know about. So eventually, that's really where I want to get into, and I already do it for my friends and family. I'm like the money guy for all of them. But how do you scale it and make it more affordable to masses? I think is a good question. I know there's a lot of fintech startups trying to do it, but yeah, how do you really get that scale and help people?
Yeah, I'll roll my eyes at the market, not at you, at the
Yeah.
market. There's a lot of noise in the market,
Yes.
but noise and music are two different things. And there's a lot of crappy providers out there. And so we really need to look at, it's who really knows what to do, who knows how to help in these circumstances. And I think people are very frustrated with the types of service providers that they have in certain industries, one of them being finances. And it's like, I'm tempted to ask every financial advisor that I meet, like, what's your net worth?
That's the first question.
It's like, man, I already know you don't have a net worth. Like, why are you trying to manage my finances?
That's the first question I ask for everything, right? If you need someone to advise you on something, you need to know that they've been there and done it in some capacity. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense.
Lots of capacities. Yes, it is very important. And granted, I will digress on that. My heart surgeon does not have to have done heart surgery on himself, right, in order to be my heart surgeon. But there's just not enough reference checks. People don't know how to ask about it. They don't know how to interview. It's too dangerous of a game because of the lack of transparency, or rather the lack of quality education that exists. And if we create transparency and we create quality education, then it will help people start to think about things that seem too complex for them to perhaps want to understand. So and speaking of, on that note, in the entrepreneur world, let's shift gears away from just the traditional advising. But why do you think leaders hide from funding their visions? I meet a lot of them that have pipe dreams. And when I say that, it's people who say they have a vision, but they're not willing to take action to fund it. Or they're scared to talk about funding their visions, not with me in general. They're just scared to approach the subject. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, well, the first thing I would think about is, of course, having the steady income and salary, right? It's like, are you really going to give up something that's stable to try to go after this thing where, 1 in 10 people or 1 in 20 or 1 in 100 really are going to take
like 1,000. I'm with you. It's a
Yeah,
very low percentage of who wins in entrepreneurship.
exactly. So it's like you see all those kind of social media posts, like your salary is kind of like a drug to some extent, right? It keeps you from going after your dream. And I think that's an extreme way of doing it. I think a lot of people, or most people, need that stability.
Yeah.
And that's one reason they don't fund it. And even in my case now, I've quit my full-time job. I'm full-time in this. I don't, it's still getting formed. It's all growing, but I've done 2 companies before, and I understand the risks of doing that. And I have a partner willing to support the lifestyle, which is, of
That's
course,
a big idea.
Yes.
Those are very, very important aspects. And that actually goes into the next question, which is how do leaders lean into funding their vision? So you mentioned a couple of things. You mentioned having a partner who supports your lifestyle. I love that. I love that you mentioned the caveat of that. And 2, you've been there and you've done this a couple of times now. So you also recognize the value of having that stable income source to help fund the project or the vision. So how else do leaders lean into funding their vision?
Yeah, I think it's very important to test the idea. So I had a co-founder when I was in Cornell, and we started a different company. He was a doctor, and we were trying to go after kind of an asynchronous business model, and we were testing that out. So we actually pitched to 300, 400 angel investors, and when I mean angel investors, just friends and family.
Okay.
To see as, hey, are you willing to even put $5,000 in this, right? Because if your own friends and family are not willing to put $5,000 or $10,000 to some fundraising round, then the idea probably sounds a little crazy, right? That's at least one way I look at it.
I just got to clap for you on that one. I just have to clap for you on it. The world of small businesses have never been on Shark Tank, and they usually don't think about the angel world. They don't know about the angel world, which, like you said, is very simplified. It's just a word for friends and family. People who are willing to invest in you. And if you cannot get that, you're going to have a very hard time with your market.
Yeah, if you're not even able to convince them on the idea you're going after, or make yourself vulnerable, right? Because nobody wants to fail, right? And now I know it's getting a little bit more accepting to fail, and people talk about failure, but people talking about failure are already pretty rich and kind of made it, right? It's not the regular person that's talking about, oh, I failed in this or this venture or that venture. So you have to be willing to put yourself out there and fail, right? And are you willing to do that? Because if you're not willing to do that, how do you plan to grow this company? It's not going to go from 0 to 10 million, where you can talk, right? It's really the struggle in between that's the hardest, right? Yeah. And there's so much of, will this work, right? And you're going through your head and constantly thinking about it. And that's the hardest part to get through, is that self-doubt in the whole thing. But you have to put yourself out there. You have to talk about the idea. You have to convince yourself it's a great idea, and convince a few others. The other cool thing, I think, Jackson, that a lot of people don't do is see if you can find a co-founder that's going to come on for equity, right? If you can convince somebody else, and all my co-founders that are coming on are equity based. They're all keeping their full-time jobs for now to decrease their risk, but I'm giving them all a portion of the company, and a pretty big chunk of the company. And that's another belief idea is, hey, can I convince one person or 2 people to come on for whatever percentage you're willing to give up, that they believe in this idea, and they will join when they can make a lower salary, say $100,000. Maybe they're making $250 today, and you need that kind of person. But you're like, hey, when I can pay you $100K, you're coming full time. Otherwise, you lose the whole thing. And if they join, if they believe in that, you have a validated idea again. That, hey, this makes sense, and a reliable team. And that's a pretty cool way to go about it.
I love that. And again, I don't hear this talked about often enough. It's very rare. I shouldn't say often enough. Anand, you're one of the few people who has ever talked about these subjects openly And we practice this at First Class Business. Huge shout out to Zach. Zach Gagnon is my right-hand man who
Okay.
only is available when as a needs basis. He has 5% of the company. And he's been doing that based on, and he could have more, and he might have more later down the road. But the efforts he's put in to help us build while maintaining what he needs for work right now, where he's at, like he's really happy with where he's at. He's happy with what he's doing. We can renegotiate at any time. He knows that. And at the same time, he wants a benefits package. Get that. And we both understand that. It's like, okay, keep your job, keep your current contracts that are going. When we get to the point where we're negotiating benefits packages and we have that baseline salary, then you can come over and spend more time with us. But he's just a backup for now. And he helped me establish the brand when we first got started. We have similar contracts with other people. And I've brought on business partners. Again, seriously, thank God that they did not take advantage of the opportunity. You have to be careful that you align with values. But I had one business partner come on. I gave him half my equity. And in half my equity, after months of working together, and we knew each other for years, I said, let's do it. And when we have investors at the next level come on board and our cash flow is positive, I'm going to be giving up 1 percentage point and you're going to be giving up 1 percentage point for that equity transaction to take place to get the investor money. Yep. And he said, cool, that's awesome. Well, fast forward 3 months, it didn't go well. We both weren't happy with the situation, but we were both friends. And he also gave me 50% equity in his venture at the same time. Okay. We decided to just call it a wash. We both took our equity stakes back, and we moved from that experience back to what we were originally doing without each other. Right? You can't. They're not all negative experiences out there when it comes to equity exchanges, and I just want I want you to realize that those who are listening in, that these types of negotiations and discussions can take place. And the better you become at healthy relationships and healthy boundaries, the more likely you end up talking to somebody who doesn't take advantage of you, but is a great way to lean into funding. And there's many ways to do just that. Do you have anything else to add on this subject before we move to the next topic?
Just one quick thing I can say on funding that I've learned recently. So I've joined this program called Veblen Director Program. Pretty cool. It's like, how do you become a board of director of a company, even if you don't maybe feel that you have the experience? And a lot of us as entrepreneurs do have that experience. But what if you are, an employee in senior management, middle management? How do you become a board of director? But what I got out of the program is when you're starting a company and you're a small entrepreneur, setting up an advisory board is like a very cool way to raise money, because you might set it up and you have nothing, right? But you have 8 people, but you make sure that all those 8 people are following your story, you're communicating. You don't have to have meetings and take a lot of time, but make sure you're sending an email out every 2 months. Hey, this is what I said I'm going to do. This is what I've done. This is where I am. And make sure their networks have big pockets. And then the day you approach and say, hey, I'm looking to raise money. Well, if you said what you're going to do, and then you've done what you said, right? That's a lot of credibility. A lot of people don't even do that. And that's a really cool way to raise funds as well.
It's a very important way. I absolutely love it. Was just talking to a nonprofit organization about 6 weeks ago, and the founder of it, she has 36 people on her board.
Wow.
Right? And it feels validating, but it is a lot. But I told her, I said, how many of them have invested in what you're doing? And she said, none. And I said, that's your greatest challenge right now. I was like, you don't need 36 chiefs.
Yep.
You need people who are on your board that are willing to put their money where their mouth is. So it's time to go. She said, well, they're all going to give $100. And I'm like, come on now. I was like, $100, like, anybody on the street will give you $100 if you just go wave a sign for a little while.
Yep.
So these are people who that you want to be directors. They really need to dive in and support you bigger on this if they're going to have that type of a role. Or they need to be contributing to the growth process in order to be worthwhile on that board. So I love that you talked about it. Those are incredibly important thoughts. What was the name of the organization?
Veblen Director Program.
How do you spell that?
Yeah, Veblin. Sorry, is it
Veblen? Got it. Veblen Director Program. A lot of letters in that name.
Sorry, it's Veblen. Yeah, Veblen Directors Program. Yeah.
Perfect. I've got that now. And we're going to dive into a dark subject. What is the worst leadership experience that you've ever had?
Yeah, for me personally, being a leader and kind of a mistake. So it goes back to my my previous story with the first sale. I mean, I was a pretty significant component of that, and vetting the organization, putting together all the deals, discussing all the red flags that were going on, and still made a mistake there, right? And maybe we didn't have the right advisors in place that were more from a litigation M&A standpoint. We might have, we went with people that were helping us from a corporate law standpoint. And I think we should have done a little bit more due diligence, or at least read three books on how do you sell your business, and how do you look for these pitfalls, or something, right?
Yes.
Which is something we did do. There was a really cool deal on the table, much higher than the value we thought we were going to get for the company,
Hmm.
and we kind of, I guess we should have seen that as a red flag in the first place.
Yeah.
Why are they willing to pay more? And they do this in and out, and they're good. They do a good job at it, right? So they know how to play the game. But either way, I think that was the worst, you could say, kind of outcome from being in a leadership position that you could have, is not stopping that from happening.
Yeah.
So that's definitely the biggest one.
That's well said. Our conversation earlier reminded me of a friend. When we were talking about the funding aspect and worst leadership decisions, too, like not sharing what you're up to because you're scared somebody's going to take it. Right. That's also one of those common realities of why people don't go get funding. I was 16 years old, I believe, at the time, when a friend's dad was super hesitant to tell me about this app that he wanted to develop, because he was worried about somebody stealing it. This is a family friend who's extremely close to us. And I'm looking back on that like, wow, like he struggled to tell me as a 16-year-old, about the app because he was so worried somebody would build this game, and he's never built the game. It's now 20 years later, and it never came to fruition. It died on the vine, probably, is my guess. But I think it's, we get so worried about fear that we don't take action. I'm glad you guys took action. You learned so much in the process of the sell that you had, and every future sell that you're ever involved in or part of, you're going to be that much more prepared to go look for that resource. And I'm sure you've found resources since as well that can help you. And that's selling the business. Like that's one of those that, when I get to that point for my businesses, I have a feeling the people that I consult with are not going to be very happy with how many different things I have to drag them to make sure that we do it the right way.
Yep.
All right. So moving into the next question, what is your best leadership experience ever?
Yeah, I think I've had two really rewarding experiences. One was when I was young. I was 23 in the Navy, and my ship was deployed outside of Syria when Syria had chemical weapons against Syrian citizens, and that's a red line for the United States. And my ship happened to be the one that was deployed already there. We were the first ones that came out.
Thanks.
And they called it Operation Nimble Warning, which was a pretty cool name. But we were in combat 20 hours a day. We had this team, and that team was always on call. We were pretty much sleeping there and getting ready to shoot, right? And we are kind of in you could say, a battle zone. We knew kind of what was going on in the arena, and that was a pretty rewarding experience because I was a strike officer on the ship, and you're under a lot of pressure, and you need to act and make decisions under a lot of pressure. And this is pressure for like 25 days. It's not like pressure for a couple hours. You get to go back and sleep. It's like ongoing pressure with the team, and you got to make sure they're rotating. Everyone's motivated, and the whole ship is kind of on red alert there. So that is kind of I would say the most rewarding. Being the leader in that scenario, keeping the team cool and learning along that, because very young leader, I guess, at the time, and you had 20 people kind of following you doing this. So pretty cool. But as you look at the business side of the house, it's definitely exiting the last company, right? Growing this small company from nothing, completely bootstrapped with a couple founders, and we grew that company and were able to exit. And I was the one pushing for the exit at the time, because I saw the way the market was flowing, and big tech was laying off, and I was like, hey, maybe this is the time If we want to exit, we're not going to be able to exit for the next couple of years. So kind of convincing everyone and pushing that exit, and it all worked out, which was great. So I think kind of two examples there on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to circle back to your military days
Yeah.
because a lot of people who want to be great leaders shy away from those experiences or consider them some of their worst experiences. When in reality, you know, the greatest leaders that I know, they run to that head on.
Yep.
They appreciate the fact that they are learning, they are growing. This is the experience that it's all meant for. And that mindset shift is something that's super helpful for business owners to consider. I mean, we all have an opportunity at any given point to shift how we tell a story, right? To shift how we feel about an experience or a story. This is one of those that I would highly recommend people considering is what element of pressure or difficult situation have you been in that you can, or is coming up or you're in right now where you can be like, you know what, I'm going to own this. I'm going to own this and dive wholeheartedly into it and make things happen. And you talked about doing that very well. If this was the last chance, Anand, for you to share a powerful experience with others, you know, specifically with visionaries, what would the powerful lesson be that they can learn from your experience?
Yeah, I would say never giving up. I think that's a very standard answer that a lot of people say. But I think the people that do succeed just, you know, they have that resilience to keep going. And if 10 people say your idea is bad and you're able to create that kind of commotion or however you want to word it, then you're probably doing something right. Right? If you know, it depends on who you're talking to and what network you're talking to. But if the network that is not in the entrepreneurial mode has no idea what you're talking about, then you're probably doing something right to some extent. And then people that are in what you're doing can relate to it. Then that's, you know, that's kind of what you're looking for. So you always have people that are, maybe you can say, bringing you down or making it much harder for you to be successful, but you need to get through that and decide who you're going to listen to, right? And have that close circle as the circle you're listening to, and just, you know, don't listen to everybody else.
Yeah.
I think that's the toughest part. Otherwise, we won't have things like Airbnb. You know
Right.
what I mean? If people did that. And it goes back to what your point was of I'm not sharing ideas. I think it's important to share ideas because Airbnb got copied when they were a 400 people company. This other company, their whole business model is to copy these startups, these moonshots. And then they went back to Airbnb and say, buy me, or I'm going to compete with you. And Airbnb, they talk about how they didn't buy the company. The other company eventually went bankrupt because it's not what they wanted to do. They're just trying to get a quick buck by copying this company. But sharing ideas, get that validation, and get the validation from people you know are in the same industry, or doing something similar in that entrepreneurial mode is important.
We were guilty once of doing something similar to that. I won't lie about it. The R&D, research and development, rip off and duplicate model, you know, those concepts. I think there's a fine line. There's an importance too of, like, I look at Firestone, Michelin, Goodyear. You know, they didn't invent the wheel.
Yep.
You know, and so they one could say that they've cheated, you know, and pulled that concept. And whether it was couchsurfing.com, you know, or something similar that was kind of going after Airbnb or Uber and Lyft, right, in a battle. The taxis existed first too, right? There's some realities there, but I like what you talked about in terms of, you know, if people are saying you're doing it wrong or you have something that's innovative or different or changing the game, especially if it's blue ocean territory. Well, I mean, that's why it's called blue ocean.
Yep.
You know, nobody knows that it exists. You know, they're just finding out and they're trying to decide, do I want to go there or do I want to go to the beach where everybody else is at? You know, there's different personalities and different realities you have to deal with when you go down that path as an entrepreneur. But when I was at Own Local, which is written about in Alex Hermosi's book, $100 Million Offer, we had an opportunity where it's one of the most public failures of all time because they were so close to being one of the best companies in marketing of our generation. And that was when Groupon CEO was dumb enough. Sorry, dude, it was a dumb decision to turn down a multi-billion-dollar offer by Google to buy it. And he thought they were going to be able to do better without them. What was he thinking? I don't know. But within 6 months, there was 230 companies that all launched with the Groupon business model
Wow.
including own local. Right, we did it. Our tech team did it. Lloyd was in charge of it, right? But I mean, I think it was overnight. We made like 36,000.
Yeah.
It was really big for us as a startup, and we were working with newspapers already to distribute the word about that. And so it was definitely a worthwhile model, and that did help us grow and expand a little bit. So you also got to be careful that whatever your idea is, you got to be the best at it.
Yeah.
Mark Cuban said that talking to Ty Lopez, like you've got to be, if you're not the best at it, somebody's going to come along and you're going to kick your booty. And he didn't say that word, but they're going to come along and they're going to destroy what you're doing. Your intellectual property is only as good as your ability to continue to make it impress the market and help the market benefit from it. So those are just, I just want to double down, never give up for sure. And keep building, and don't be scared to model what's out there, because the idea probably does exist.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you should, at least I feel that we should talk about the ideas because it's all about execution in the end of the day to become the best possible. And once you see a success story, of course, a lot of people are going to go copy it, right?
Yeah.
That is like, saying that you became successful. That should be validation that a lot of people are coming after you to chip away at that business. And that's natural, but hopefully you have the scale at that point in time to do it. And if you're the small business, hopefully you have that rigor to go after that big company, which a lot of people are, of course, trying to chip away at Microsoft and Google and everything that they're doing because they're so successful.
Absolutely.
Secret sauce, but the concept, why not, right?
Yep. So creating fruitful outcomes, all of these concepts for entrepreneurs apply to creating the fruitful outcomes. And we didn't touch much on capital markets, at least as a layman. I don't think so. I mean, that's not my forte to dive into terms that go that high up the intellectual chart. But what would you like to add in terms of fruitful outcomes in capital markets, Anand?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of value with scale in today's market. So when we talk about Kenobi Capital and going back to what we're trying to do and how we're helping founders, there's an aspect of one is cleaning up the business that makes it highly valuable because you're looking at EBITDA multiples in small companies. So first you go kind of through an accelerator, you clean up the business, but when you have scale, you get a much higher valuation, and that's when the capital market play comes in. So if you're doing, say, $5 million in revenue with $500,000 in sales versus 50 million and $5 million in profits, right? It's a big difference, and that's when capital markets get more enticed with your business, and they will actually create their own bidding war in this, which jacks up the price automatically, which is pretty cool. So that's when capital markets come into play. Is when you have scale, you're looking to exit, and you have 5 or 6 companies together that make it really attractive. And it unlocks that value because capital markets really want to get into small businesses, right? How else do they grow? Is they want to acquire a lot of these companies. And that's how capital markets come into play. It's unlocking the value between, small businesses and capital markets. And I think there's a lot of value to be unlocked there with this generational shift right now with boomers retiring, selling companies, and, just the wealth transfer that's going on is tremendous.
That's awesome. Absolutely. So anybody who's in that position, of course, feel free to reach out to Anand Narayan and see what's going on. We're going to put the action steps as well as part of this episode down below the show, so you know which action steps make the most sense for you based on where your brand's at. Also, we have a call to action on the page in the top right corner. It's going to say, be our guest. If you have a vision you'd like to share, we'd love to hear your vision on Vision Pros Live. Don't hesitate to apply. We'll take you through a pre-show process where we get to talk behind the scenes about what you're up to. And then if it makes sense to have you come on the show for both parties. And of course, we'll look at what we're going to do to distribute your voice, make sure that you get heard. Anybody who also has a comment or a question, feel free to drop those in the show and let us know. We'll make sure that Anand gets access to those. And lastly, if you feel inspired by the show, subscribing, liking it, sharing it with others, that's super helpful for all of us. We really appreciate everybody who listens into the show. And I'm going to let Anand finish us off. Anand, anything you want to share before we go?
Yeah, just thanks for having me on, Jackson. Really appreciate it. It's been fantastic chatting with you, and love to hear what other entrepreneurs are doing. And I think you're showcasing a lot of other people's visions here. So that's fantastic to learn what others are doing. And yeah, anyone that just wants to connect, network, be in that group, right, of people you can bounce ideas off of, happy to help in any capacity, whatever that might look like, to see those ideas work, if we can get in front of investors and just help people with the entrepreneurial journey.
That's perfect. Vision Pros, we will see you on the next episode. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Thank you for being here today. I'm really happy that you tuned in to Vision Pros Live. I'm looking forward to seeing your reactions as these episodes continue to move forward. This is going to get more and more fun. We'll have more and more engagement as well. We'll invite people to participate in the show. And thank you for giving us your time and attention. Have an excellent